My name is hazelmillichamp and this is the Light on Leeds podcast, where I spread a light all across the region of Leeds to find amazing people doing brilliant things. One of the amazing people that I found this week is Catherine Warr. She has a YouTube channel called Yorkshire's Hidden History. It's very, very popular. She tells me about how she became part of a national YouTube campaign, which is really interesting to hear about. And she's also in the process of having a book published called A Yorkshire Year. She's a really interesting guest. She's got a lot to say and she says it very well. So I think you'll enjoy it. On this episode of Light on Leeds, I have Catherine Warr come to speak to me. Hello, Catherine.
Oh, yeah.
So, Catherine, you were telling me that you're enjoying watching the Commonwealth Games currently.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the triathlon to start, so I'm currently watching the cycling.
Why particularly the triathlon?
I think because it's a nice mix. You got swimming, running, cycling. It's all a bit different, and then there's like a nail biting finish towards the end. So all thrilling stuff.
Oh, that sounds great. And Catherine, you have come along to speak to me today because you have got a very successful YouTube channel called Yorkshire's Hidden History. Have you always been obsessed with history?
Yeah, pretty much. It's always been a major part of my childhood. I was always taken around to museums and castles, and it's just always been a major part of my life. And then a few years ago, sort of out of the blue, I kind of noticed that there wasn't really anyone doing Yorkshire history videos. So I started, and they were very bad. But then over time, I got better, and here we are.
Oh, because you've got to learn as you go along, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly.
And how often do you release these videos?
So I try and aim for every 2 weeks, but obviously it depends on the scope of the video, because sometimes I have to sort out travel and transport, or if there's multiple locations. In fact, I've got a very exciting one coming up in the next few weeks on Louis LePrince, who you probably have heard about.
Have, yeah.
Yeah, but for those who haven't, he was a Frenchman who lived in Leeds and took the world's first moving pictures on Leeds Bridge and Roundhay Park. So really, really amazing that we've got the world's first films, even though they are only about 2 seconds long, but in Leeds. And I've got a friend who sort of acts as my producer, and we're hoping, fingers crossed, to get access to the Bradford Media Museum where his original camera is held. So that'll be amazing. So,
oh wow, yeah, it really will.
Yeah.
And wasn't there a bit of a mystery about, didn't he go missing, Louis LePrince?
Yeah, so he disappeared after getting the train to Paris, and there's some conspiracies that he was assassinated on the orders of Thomas Edison so he could steal his invention, or that he just got mugged and disappeared. But a lot of people spend a lot of time talking about his disappearance, and it's interesting, and I love true crime, but I also think that the focus should be actually on what he achieved.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so anyway, the point I was going to say is, so that video is taking a little bit longer to produce because we want it to be obviously the best documentary on YouTube about Louis LePrince, and if we can get into a museum and speak to people who look after it, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And so how do you come up with your ideas? Do you have suggestions from people who visit your YouTube channel? How does it work?
It's a bit of both, really. So a lot of my ideas I get pretty much out of the blue. I'll see something and I'll go, oh, I can make a good video. I do actually have a list of about 20 ideas. And sometimes I'll just see something and I'll think, nobody's really done it that way, or I could do this but in a different way to how everyone else has done it. To be honest, I mean, people do suggest things, and sometimes I think, actually, that's really good. I like to do that. But sometimes it's really niche stuff, and it might be the most interesting thing in the world to them, but I've got to balance sort of the how much demand there is for people worldwide, essentially, in that particular topic. So it's actually quite difficult having to decide on a topic which is going to be niche enough to stand out, but also interesting enough and popular enough for people to watch it.
Yeah, of course. And when you're talking about your YouTube audience, is it mainly people from Yorkshire or is it people from all over the world?
It's worldwide, which is really incredible. I've got people from Canada, America, Australia, Europe. I don't know what they find interesting about Yorkshire history, but for some of them, it's their family history. Their ancestors migrated from Yorkshire, and they're trying to reconnect with where their family came from. Other
Mm-hmm.
people have no connection to Yorkshire, but they just enjoy learning and they enjoy the way that I present information. And so it's really, really great to see how many people across the world can actually access things like this, because 20 years ago, you might just publish a local history book and it would never go beyond Leeds, maybe, but now you can put it online and everyone can find it.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It's the same with this podcast. You'd imagine, especially because it's so Leeds centric, that most of the audience would just be Leeds, but it's not. There's people all over the world listening to it. When I look at statistics, I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
And Catherine, you had a really exciting thing happen to you. I think it was last year, where YouTube used you for their advertising campaign. How did that come about?
Yeah, so that was incredible. So it was a campaign which highlighted regional creators in the UK. So I was sort of Yorkshire basically, and it was a little bit surreal because they had a big photo shoot. So I had to kick my parents out of the house, tidy everything up, and I knew I wanted to dress up as something, but I couldn't decide what. And a few weeks before, I was looking through my cupboard and I noticed that I had like a flight jacket, and I was like, interesting. That could work for something. And I realised I could make a really good Amy Johnson costume. So I bought on the internet a dress up pilot's cap, some goggles, and then I just put on that jacket and a scarf, and then I came to the crew and I was like, I'm going to be Amy Johnson, and they loved it, and it works really well as a photo. So we had this 3-hour long photo shoot, and then the image was put on billboards, in newspapers, online, and it was just really, really good to be able to get that exposure, especially because I'm not a huge YouTuber. I only have just over 5,500 subscribers. There's people out there with millions of subscribers, but I feel very honoured that they would pick me when there's other people, other Yorkshire YouTubers who actually have more views and subscribers than me, but they picked me for some reason. So I'm very, very honoured to have been selected for that.
Did it feel really strange when you saw your face up on billboards in the city centre?
Yeah, it's really weird to describe because I remember the first time I was like, oh, that's me. And because one of them was on the Trinity Shopping Centre in Leeds, I'd walk past there and nobody recognised me on the street, but it'd be like, they don't know I'm up there.
I would have been tempted just to stand like underneath it. You know what I mean? Like stand there until somebody was like, oh, is that you? So when they got in touch with you, did they just email you and say, we'd like you to take part in this advertising campaign?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, to be honest, when I first got the email, I thought it was a scam. But I was like, well, they're not asking for my bank details, so might as well. And it was real, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it was... and I think the funny thing as well is that I didn't realise sort of the full extent until a bit later, because I do get involved in various different things. So it was only after a few months that I realised, oh, wow, this is the campaign.
I thought it was a great campaign as well, because it was sort of making the point that, people can have all sorts of interests, and that YouTube is a great way to sort of express them. Because I imagine YouTube's having a little bit of the same problem that other social media are having, where, kind of fighting the rise of TikTok to some extent.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I don't use TikTok personally. And as I've sort of grown in my journey as being a creator, even when a lot of platforms are pivoting towards really short sort of low attention span content, my videos have started to become longer because I just want to take the time to make an atmosphere and to tell as much as I can to the audience. So in some ways, I think it would be easy to just start doing 30-second videos, but I've realised that that's not my style at the minute. And just to go back to the campaign quickly, the really cool bit was they had an exhibition with all of the other people. There was about 13 others involved in the Mall galleries in London.
Wow.
Which it was on the wall, on the mall, sorry, next to Buckingham Palace. So it was a rainy day, but I got there and I could see my image on the wall next to everyone else's, and it was just really nice because just to see how far I've come, it really felt like it meant a lot.
Yeah, I bet, definitely. I thought it was... when I saw your billboard, I was saying to my niece, oh, I know her. I thought it was great, fantastic, and such a brilliant image. I think you chose exactly the right costume. What were the other people like who were in the campaign? Was it nice to meet them as well?
So I didn't actually meet any of them personally, but I saw the images, but they're all doing really different things. So there was one guy who was, I think, fixing bikes, making videos about how to ride a bike and fix it. There was one woman who was doing a lot of deaf and disability history and LGBT history, and she's got a really unique style because she wears a lot of vintage clothes as well. So it was a really, really broad range of people who were involved.
Yeah, that I bet that was brilliant. Yeah, fantastic for you. And so you said at the beginning that you've always been interested in history and that you went to lots of museums and things. So and I've seen a few images that you share on Twitter, and you quite often find you find sort of odd things around your house. So have your parents always been sort of collectors and into history themselves, and that was part of the inspiration?
Yeah, absolutely. My parents are hoarders, so they've got lots of books and lots of very interesting things. Today, my mum went shopping, came back. She'd gone to a charity shop and bought a vintage nutcracker made in Leeds.
I saw that.
Yeah, it just that's the type of thing, and it's quite funny actually because this is normal to me. When I go to someone's house and it's white, empty walls, it feels really weird to me because I've always been surrounded by clutter. And last year I was like, we've got a lot of Yorkshire books. I might as well try catalogue them all. So I made a big spreadsheet. I put them all into bookcases, and there are over 570 of them. That's 20 years worth of accumulating.
That is a lot of books. And while we're on the subject of books, you've been, I can't remember how far you are in the process. You've been writing, or you've written a book?
Yeah, so it's finished. I'll give a whole background to what it is, but the stage that the process it's in now is proofs, where basically you get a PDF copy of what it's going to look like when it's printed, and then you check for any errors or things you want to change, and then you send it back, and then it comes back and you read through it again, and it goes back and forth until everyone's happy. So I've sent back the proof saying that, this is 99% there. There's just these few tiny things, and after that, 100%, ready for it to go ahead. And the book is called A Yorkshire Year, 366 Days of Folklore, Customs and Traditions. And like the title suggests, it is a whole year of Yorkshire folklore, customs and traditions. And the story behind it is, I was on the bus one morning 2 years ago, and I was thinking about a book called The English Year by Steve Rood. Now, it's an absolutely brilliant book. It is sort of the authoritative book on English customs. But I noticed that it didn't actually cover the whole year. It was just things like Christmas and feast days and things like that. And I just had a thought. I was like, oh, well, someone could do that, but do it for a whole year. Well, someone could do it for Yorkshire, or I could do that. And then, to cut a long story short, I went home, I got out all the relevant books from the bookcase, and then I just started researching and started writing it. And the process was a little bit challenging at times, but I had a little mantra of by hook or by crook, there'll be 365 days in my book. And eventually, when it was about halfway through, I started pitching it to publishers, got a few rejections, as is normal, but then one took me on, and then I finished it, and then that's the story up to there. So it's really, really exciting, and it just feels really surreal to be able to say, I'm going to be a published author soon.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant. You've done a great job. I mean, most people find it incredibly difficult to get something published, so you must have sparked their interest, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. So have you had thoughts about what it's going to look like and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I haven't been sent the cover image yet, but again, I think we'll discuss kind of what we want to look from it, to see from it. Sorry, but the actual design is really nice. There's a lot of pictures. It's very colourful. It's not just a lot of text on the page. It's spaced out a bit, so you can take it in little chunks. So you could read one page a day, or you could read it all in 3 hours if you wanted to. But it's going to be a really easy read, I think.
Oh, brilliant. And so that must have took an awful lot of hard work. So were you saying it's been around 2 years?
Yeah, so I'd say I started writing it in about October 2020, and then it was half finished in January 2021 when it got accepted by the publisher. So after that, I could sort of chill out a little bit because there wasn't the stress of having to get it accepted. And so I'd say I finished it properly about March 2021. But the thing with publishing is that it is such a notoriously long and slow process that it has taken up to this point to actually get where we are, and that's just what it's like, unfortunately.
And have you? I mean, I don't want to put any pressure on you because this one's not out yet. But have you had any thoughts about a second book?
I have, yeah. I did start researching one shortly after the first one was accepted, but to be honest, the time scale for publishing it's a little bit frustrating because I'm the type of person where I like to have everything and I want to have it now. And when I'm doing my videos, because I'm in control, I can decide how long to work on it or when to publish it. And so, when you're in the situation where your baby, essentially your project, you don't know how long it's going to take, that it doesn't really fit with my brain. So I'm not ruling it out because I think actually I quite enjoy writing, but the process of publishing has actually opened my eyes, and I'm beginning to wonder whether the things that could be written in the book actually could be put into a video instead.
Right, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Well, at least you've had the chance to sort of go through the process to come to
Yeah,
that
exactly.
conclusion. So when you were writing the book, did you have to were you scouring your own home for sources, or, how did you come up with the material?
Yeah, so a lot of the books were ones which we already owned, and these were ones which were quite old. They were out of print, published in the 19th, early 20th century. And what's really good about these is that a lot of the information hasn't actually made its way onto the internet yet. So you get a lot of little nuggets of information which other people don't. And one really useful website for these actually is called Huddersfield Exposed, because they've got a lot of Victorian books about Yorkshire on an online PDF version, scanned, and it's free to access. And some of the books that I used, I read on there, the ones which I didn't have at home. So that's a really good resource. And also a lot of locally published ones. So there's one woman called Dulcie Lewis. She's got some brilliant books on really niche stuff like Yorkshire Cures, Yorkshire Privies. That one woman had written an entire book on holy wells in Bradford. So really lots and lots of like niche stuff which we just happened to pick up from charity shops and stuff, and just compiling these together and yeah, finding these bits of information which are interesting and which you feel is a bit different, because when you're researching anything, you find that the same facts just get regurgitated over and over and you want to find something different.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously people will be able to do that with your book because of the sources that you've used. And like you say, you know, a lot of these books are probably out of print, or, you know, people that information, like you said, it's fascinating, isn't it? Being able to find information that's not on the internet.
Exactly, yeah.
So Catherine, what is next for your YouTube channel? How far ahead do you plan?
It's it's an interesting question because I've got a rough idea that I want to keep doing this for as long as I can, and I don't see any reason why I should stop. But if you were to ask me sort of where I saw myself in the next few years, I don't know. I mean, the ultimate aim really is to get on TV, to be like Fred Dibner, but you just got to see how it goes. I've got a list of about 20 video ideas that I want to make, with new ones being added all the time. So unless YouTube just shuts down entirely, which I don't see happening, I just think I'm going to make videos for the next few years.
Yeah, why not? And if you could have your own TV program, is there a particular channel that you would like it to be on? And what kind of theme would it be?
Oh, I've already got it planned out in my head. So I don't know what channel it would be, but I got the idea for doing something like a half-hour thing where I travel around and I've got costumes and I've got a little touring bus, and I just talk about the different places and different stories from history, and just something which is a little bit different. I write a lot of parody songs about history, so there'd be little musical segments. You know, it'd be something which is just a bit of light-hearted entertainment. But then I'd also do serious documentaries as well, which you see on TV now. So I think, you know, I'm quite versatile in what I'd like to do.
Yeah, well, the world's your oyster, Catherine. So keep going with it all. Is there a particular period of history that you're particularly interested in yourself?
Yeah, this is one of the questions that I get asked all the time. So I've sort of got a stock answer,
That's fine.
but so I do enjoy all periods of history on my channel. I've gone from prehistoric up to 1960s, but I think my favourite is probably the 18th and 19th centuries. And part of it is because we've got more information now. We've got more written documents, so there's more information available, and also more people are able to actually tell their stories. So obviously, previously, only the very wealthy or the religious were educated, so only they could read or write. Whereas now, more people can learn how to read and write, so more people are able to actually tell their own stories and experiences. And that's one of the reasons why Gentleman Jack and Anne Lister has been so popular, because it's one of the first times that an LGBT person has actually been able to record their own experiences. So that's one of the reasons why I like that period. But also, there's a very big contrast, because you have this tremendous greed and exploitation at home and abroad. You have children working in factories. You have horrific living conditions. You have the colonies and plantations abroad. But at the same time, you have all of these people who recognize that as being wrong and work to make the world a better place. So you have Titus Salt, who makes a whole village for his workers, which is far healthier and cleaner than what Bradford would have been at the time. You have all of the abolitionist campaigners, just all the people who were able to see that that was wrong. And having that juxtaposition is really, really interesting to me.
Yeah, I can completely see why, and I really get what you're saying about the having the first-hand accounts of people, because when you look back through history, as you all know, it can be very biased. People's representations of what happened or how important somebody was, and it's often the people who were the victors in some way who get to write the
Yeah.
history. Do you find yourself sometimes shouting at the TV when you are watching perhaps a period drama or something, and you can see that it's not historically accurate? Is that like a hazard of the job?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not one of these people who will go, oh, the stitching isn't correct on this uniform. Like I tend to just enjoy historical dramas, but there are times when I get quite frustrated at the way history is presented on TV. So I find that a lot of the time, because it is so simple and dumbed down, it's almost patronising to people's level of knowledge, and it means that they're never really getting a level of nuance or detail which they could find in books. And sort of one of my missions is to get quite complicated ideas across, but in a very simple way. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that frustrates me. I mean, there was one that I was watching months ago, and it was saying something along the lines of like, oh, the Blitz was when Germany was bombing Britain. I was like, oh, yes, we all know that. We were all taught it in school, but that's the level of information you're giving us here, you know.
Yeah, I can imagine that you find that frustrating. Well, you're exactly the right person to put that right. Catherine, what will you be doing with the rest of your day today?
So I'm actually waiting for my next video to upload. It's really interesting. Gosh, I can talk for ages on this. So it's about a man called William Bradford who was born in Austerfield near Doncaster, and he's famous for being one of the longest serving governors of Plymouth Colony in America. And he also wrote the first history of Plymouth Colony. So he's really one of the most important figures in that early colonial period in American history. And it was right here in Yorkshire. And you do get a lot of Americans coming to the village and nearby villages to retrace the steps. So I went there, I filmed, and I don't want to give the game away, but after I'd made the video, I found out something which completely changed my opinion on him. And I was like, gosh, well, I don't want to remake the whole video. I'm going to have to rewrite a lot of it. So there's a bit of a plot twist, if you could describe it as that. But I've chosen to keep that approach, as in to keep the original video, but then put in this quote unquote plot twist at the end to show that this is actually how history works, that sometimes we don't know all the facts, and the story we told about someone has to change in the light of new evidence. But anyway, that's going to be coming out today, in fact, by the time people have heard it, on William Bradford. And then I'll be chilling out watching more of the Commonwealth Games.
Fantastic. Sounds brilliant. And that sounds really intriguing and really interesting. But, you know, I'm going to have a watch because I'm going to have to find out what it is now. I need to know the plot twist. Catherine, can I ask you, have you always lived in Leeds, near Leeds?
Yes, I've always been born in Leeds, lived in Leeds. I did go to university in Bradford, but, you know, it's close enough.
It certainly is. So that means that you're 100% qualified to answer the 3 questions that I ask every guest. The first one being, what would you say is great about the city of Leeds?
Gosh, that's interesting because I didn't prepare for these beforehand. So for me, what I've always liked is how accessible a lot of the places are. So obviously, most of the museums and galleries are free.
Yeah.
And it means that you can have a whole day out on a bus ticket and stuff. So I think that's really important, because I know I was taken to the museum and different places a lot when I was a kid. So that's something I really appreciate in terms of making knowledge and experiences accessible for everyone.
Yeah, that's a really great answer.
Yeah.
When my son was small, I wouldn't have much money, yeah, that was always a great thing for me. Or if I had nieces and nephews visiting, we'd always go and take advantage of the free museums and art galleries. And it's a great way to educate your children without them knowing that they're being educated.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you had to choose something that you thought was not so great, what would you go for?
So this is always a slightly unpopular one, but the gentrification in Leeds, you know, when things are getting more expensive, I mean, whoever normalised a drink in a bar costing £9, we need to talk. Just step outside. You know? And it's sort of the thing where you do feel this sense of almost being priced out of your own city. And oh gosh, don't even get me started on housing. So, and you know, when you're seeing like all the new student flats being constructed, you know, when the earth has turned to dust, they'll still be building more student flats in Leeds. So that, you know, there's a lot of issues there, but I've always got to look for the people who are making the solutions to that, working on making Leeds greener and more affordable for everyone. So got to keep positive.
Yeah, definitely, but a good answer. And if somebody had lived in Leeds for a very long time, would you be able to tell them about something that you consider to be a hidden gem that they might never have heard of?
Oh, okay, so I mean, I don't know how much of a hidden gem this one is, because obviously everyone has different levels of knowledge, but something which took a lot of people by surprise on one of my videos is there's a Beatles song called Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, and obviously anyone who's been to Liverpool knows that you can't walk anywhere without bumping into something Beatles related. And John Lennon was inspired to write it after seeing the concert poster, or it's not concert, sorry, circus poster of Pablo Fanck, who was a very unusual man. He was a black man in Victorian Britain who actually owned a circus, so a very successful businessman. And he did a lot in Leeds and Bradford, and actually his wife died tragically when a seat collapsed in Leeds, and he was buried in Leeds. So he's buried in the Woodhouse Cemetery, which is behind the University of Leeds. And so I filmed a video about him, and it is a bit of a tenuous link to the Beatles, I think. You know, I'm really sort of, trying to force this link between the Beatles and Yorkshire, but it is interesting because it shows just how many links there are between history and popular culture and just, the way we live.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're exactly right. Yeah, it's I think I've never heard it called Woodhouse Cemetery yet. We at the university we refer to it as St George's Fields.
Oh right,
yeah. It's like a secret little enclave, and people had told me about it, but I didn't actually get to visit until I went last year with my lovely friend, work colleague Phil. Took me and showed me, and yeah, it's a really beautiful little oasis in the middle of the university complex.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, it's been fantastic speaking to you, Catherine, and I will put lots of links in the podcast notes so that people can find your YouTube channel. Best of luck with the book, and I'm really looking forward to reading it.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great to have me on.
Thank you so much. I'm sure that you'll agree Catherine was a brilliant guest. She's got a lot of knowledge about Yorkshire history. You should definitely check out her YouTube channel and obviously read a book when it comes out. I chose the track for this episode, and the song that I chose is called Lammas Fair. It's by Henry Parker, and it's just really beautiful. I think you're going to really get into it. See what you think. Speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Stone sounds for Lammas Fair. We'll bless the grain and burn the wheel and breathe the harvest air. The sight we can will blur the lines from the red rose. Send out smoke to the parted sky on a waning summer night. gamble, make our claims on the racing of the horse. So take the road from Buckstone Gate